because where I live, there's too much light to see very many stars, and you have the most beautiful sky. And I just stood there for about 5 or 10 minutes looking at this, and that for me was prayer, because we were enveloped in wonderment at this creation, and you don't need words for prayer.
And some people say all of life is a prayer, so you could do everything prayerfully. You might be praying when you're washing up or when you're playing, but our lives are a prayer, the way we live them.
Thank you. Who had the next question? Yes.
Do you have to pray at home, or do you have to go to a church?
We pray at home. In everybody's home.
Pray anywhere.
Anywhere.
I'll pray in a church.
Yeah, actually, that's true. Me too. Yeah.
We have all been praying in other people's places of worship. On this trip, we've been into a synagogue. Some people went with Stephen. We've been to a mosque. We often sleep in churches. We've been around the Peace Brigade, but we haven't been to Buddhist temples. So, but we all pray in each other's traditions.
And we went to a tree cathedral.
We went to a tree cathedral built out of trees.
Like your den.
Wow.
And in the Jewish tradition, there's prayers for virtually everything. There's a prayer you say even before going to the toilet. You say, thank you for giving me the right hole so I can go to the toilet. So if you're very religious, you say prayers before all the time.
Can I just ask, is it such a beautiful question? In a way, wherever we place that respect, and wherever we place our prayer, it becomes sacred. It's our choice to make it sacred.
How interesting to hear that the level of respect that they have for one another's faiths, that they feel comfortable enough to welcome one another into one another's special places, sacred places, and they respect one another, and they all feel comfortable to pray in there. That's amazing. Who's got another question? Yes.
Whose idea was it to walk to Glasgow together?
Whose idea was
I've got
to
to
Glasgow?
It was mine, and I don't know why. I don't say this when I talk to the people from the news or the radio. I think it must have been God that put that idea in my head, because I don't do long distance walking. I've never done anything like this. I'm sitting at a desk all day, and then one day it was sort of, well, this seems like a good idea. And I asked a friend who did expedition planning, and she said yes. And if she'd said no, the idea would have died. But she said yes, and it's just grown from there. So, everyone can do something, and that was my little bit.
Excellent. Who else had a question? Archie.
I forgot mine.
You forgot yours. That's fine. Iona.
Is there any do or don'ts in your sacred place?
Any do's and don'ts in your sacred places?
Well, in the synagogue, when you go into the synagogue, you're meant to cover your head. So, if you're, this is in most places, if you're a man, you're meant to cover your head. And
I'd say in the Buddhism there aren't any rules. There are no rules because you have to take responsibility for yourself. But I would say if we harm something or someone, in a sense we are harming ourselves as well. So it's that understanding of interconnectedness, really.
The only thing I can think of about a mosque, in the Quran, I think it talks about no violence of any kind. So, some things that happen in other parts of the world where you see, for example, in Jerusalem, where there's been violence inside mosques, that can be very distressing to Muslims to see that happen. But other than that, I can't really think of anything.
But the core of the Camino as well is non-violent, any form of non-violent direct action as well. And I think that is absolutely central to all our faiths.
I can tell you what we do all think should happen, as a counterpoint to that. Love is the core of everything we do, and that should be at the centre of every holy place, all our places of worship.
Excellent. Any more questions? And perhaps some questions as well about the environmental side of what's going on here, which is very dear to everybody's hearts at the moment. Frankie?
nation to disappear?
Can I answer that? I grew up in some islands in the Pacific. They're called the Solomon Islands, and they have already lost 4 islands, one of which was inhabited, and the people there have had to find somewhere else to go and live. And that's really difficult because the land on the bigger,
by the way.
the sea rose, and all their homes were washed away. And in fact, they had a church, and you can see only the roof of the church is now above the sea level. And they have to move to land that belongs to someone else. They have to buy it. Where does that money come from? It's just really difficult. So I think the first places that will disappear will be these small islands in the ocean.
Absolutely tragic. Great question. Any other questions about what they're achieving on their walk, about the environmental side of things? Reuben, you were talking to me before about some thoughts you had.
Well, like, what do you want to see in the future? Like, what do you want the people in the future to think of this act?
These questions are just wonderful. Can I say that we'll be walking with your questions? We'll take your questions with us, and we will keep thinking about them. Caroline, you wanted to say something?
I think that what I guess I would want people in the future to see is that we were willing to change the ordinary way that everyone's lives go and decide to actually just stop doing all that normal stuff and just dedicate ourselves to this problem. I mean, there are so many different things that maybe people could come up with for solutions. I don't know the best way to do things, but this walk feels like, in this moment, the best thing that I can do. So I'd like to think that future generations will be sympathetic towards the people who are willing to take steps to do things that are different and brave. Even if we don't know if it will make a difference.
And even if history doesn't remember us, I have children, and I may someday have grandchildren. I want to be able to tell them I did something. And this is the something that I did, even if no one else knows.
And I'm not sure if this answers your question, but one thing that we want to do is we want to show a way of living, helping each other, that we think will be very important whatever happens in the future. And we're all helping each other, we're all doing different jobs according to our strengths and what we want to do. And I think that will be important for the future, for people to learn to do that better. And we're trying to model that.
And when we do that, we aren't afraid of telling people our weaknesses and where we're vulnerable. And I think that's really important because we can ask people for help. We're not afraid of asking each other for help. And that's the way it needs to be. That we don't make fun of the weakest. We're not mean to them. We say that we're here to help them.
We can only complete the walk all together. We all, each day we all need to finish and look after each other so that we can all get there. Not just, the fast ones at the front and so on. That's really important.
And also we realise that I know when I'm walking, I'm dealing with the things I'm frightened about for the future. I'm dealing with the things that I don't want to look at for the future. So therefore, when I'm meeting other people who also can't believe that we need to do anything, I'm not thinking I'm better than them. I'm ready to really try and understand why they think the way they think. Because it takes time to change, doesn't it? We are going to make the difference all together.
Thank you very much.